Well, hello friends. You know what? We are getting into that time of the year. I know it's surprising. Don't worry, I have Kip coming with me to express the excitement for this time of year. It's when I start putting all my plants away. Now, I know it seems like we just got them all out when it was May, but now it is October, and here in Iowa, we're gonna have most likely our first frost later this week, which means I am starting getting all my plants corralled. So a lot of you ask me when I show you containers around the house, around the farm, what do you do with all the plants in the winter? I'm about to show you. I bring them all into a retrofitted plant room. I've shown in the past the plant room. It is nothing pretty. Actually, far from it. It's quite rustic, which it works really well. It's just an old building on the farm. So I thought I'd bring you along for the day, kind of as I'm putting plants away, what my process is. Newsflash, there is no real process. I just kind of make it work. You know, sometimes we just do what we gotta do to get things done, right? And that's what this is all about. So I'm gonna show you loading the plants up, which I've started doing, and where I'm gonna put them. So this is a table that's out in my garden. You know, it's out kind of in my more formal area. I have the fire pit area behind it. And then this holds a lot of my aloe pups, agave pups, and I've started putting them on the gator. So this is a few of the larger ones. So for my front porch, I took the large pencil cactus. It's one that is kind of the mother plant to all my other ones. I have a jade on here. I have a bird's nest fern. I have some different aloe and agave, a mangave back there. And I know, the aloe is still even blooming. The hummingbirds love these blooms. Anyway, what I'm doing is actually getting these on the gator because I have the plant room over at the main farm, which is where my mom lives. That's where I've kind of made a room retrofitted to work. And what I do is I load them up, one load at a time, take them over and start filling in the spaces. So why don't you guys come along? I'm gonna go take these over and we'll start putting them away. So what you see behind me is the entrance to my plant room. So it's an old livestock building on our farm that we don't use anymore. And the front small room, it's small, is an old work room that was insulated. I added the big windows, and I'll show you more here inside, and I have radiant heaters, and this is what keeps my plants alive over the winter. Now this same idea can be used in a garage, can be used in a basement, a room of your house, whatever it is. So let me grab a plant, let's take it in, and let's get started. So I've taken a few plants in, I have a couple aloe left. Sometimes I'm like, why do I have so many of these? So you can see here, it is nothing special where we're going into. It's actually quite rustic, but that's the point. So in the floor is a massive drain, and you can actually, that's what's great about this, is I can water and everything can just go down to the drain. So what I usually do is I have multiple ways in here to store plants. So on Facebook Marketplace, I look anytime I can find stainless steel work tables. A lot of times these were used in industrial kitchens. You can find them relatively cheap sometimes. They don't rust, that's why I love stainless steel. So I have a low table here in front of one of the windows, and that holds a lot of my agave, because I want them to get a lot of sun. And then what I do is I just have plant stands and shelves all around. You can see they're just lining. And what I do is I just use plastic trays that I wash year to year. They look dirty, but that's because they're years old. And I will just put them on the shelving and just start lining things up. Now, when I first start bringing things in, you think, oh my gosh, this is so nice, there's so much room. I have way too many plants, so I pack them in here tighter than they really should be. But I even have things on the floor like, these are just rollers, so you can put heavy plants on a roller and then easily move them around if I want to. Same with on this side. I kind of delineate it. I'll usually put my ferns over on this side with my citrus up here in front of that window. I did bring the large pencil cactus in here. Then I will just line everything up and start filling it up. So my radiant heaters, you can see there's one there and there's one right here behind me. Now this is literally, it is very easy to use. There's no forced air, so it's not blowing hot air out. I feel like that makes it not get so dry in the plant room. So instead I can just set it somewhat, you know, the other one does have a temperature gauge, but either way I come in and check this, if not daily, every other day, just to kind of see how the temperatures are regulating. So I'm gonna keep bringing plants in, keep filling it up, and you'll kind of see, I don't know, we'll see if there's a method to my madness. I really don't think there is. So I'm bringing in another, this is the last of my second load. So I do multiple loads and it will take quite a few, but I kind of just wanna show you the in-betweens here of how I'm filling it up. And we're gonna talk about bugs, we're gonna talk about lighting, because all that matters. So the reason I use these little plastic trays everywhere is just to create a little bit cleaner space, catch the water so it doesn't drip down over everything. But you can see already, we're in the afternoon right now when I'm filming this. It's probably around 3 o'clock. The sun is really just basking inside of these windows, and you can see that's why I put the agave. I try to put as much sun-loving things closer to the windows as I can, because you can see they actually at least catch it then. I know, don't they look happy? I always feel kind of bad for them when I bring the plants in because it has to be such a shock. Honestly, it would work best if you could transition plants when the temperature is somewhat the same outdoors as it is indoors. It's going to be a little less shock. Either way, it's still going to be a shock. The wind will be different, the breeze will be different, the sunlight will be different, but we do what we do to try to create somewhat the same. So what I have in here, and this is the nitty gritty, is just grow lights, and I have them every so often. Here's one of them that I turned on so you could see it. I don't need to have them on quite yet as I'm transitioning plants, but they're full spectrum grow lights. There's no grow light that's absolutely perfect, but if you get a full spectrum, it gives it all the colors of the light that it can use because plants like certain colors of light. And I'm trying a new one over here this year. It's even bigger. You can see all of the different light bulbs in there. I think there's 8 light bulbs, which is awesome. And underneath it here is where I'm gonna put my olive trees. You can see my birds of paradise will go here. A couple large ferns will go here. So what do I do about all the bugs that are probably living within these plants? There's multiple things you can do. The first one I do is when I have these outdoors, I spray them off with a hard stream of water. Not like a pressure washer, but just a hard stream to knock off any just kind of superficial bug that's maybe sitting on there. It's kind of the first round of defense. Then the second thing I do is I use a little sprayer. I have a little hardy sprayer here, and I just put like a dead bug brew, or which is organic, or a like a spinosad in it, and I will spray them down just organically in here once they're placed to try to get any of the more of the residual bugs that could be living on them. So those are my 2 defenses that I try to use, and then obviously what would work best is if they have good air circulation. I do have a fan I put up in here. And just be checking them constantly during the winter to try to stay ahead of it. Scale is one that I get really bad on citrus, and then sometimes on rosemary when I bring those in. And really the best thing to do is horticultural oil. So before I bring in my citrus, I will spray them with horticultural oil. Same with my rosemary, just to hopefully stave off any scale. Scales, those little gross armored bugs that go up on the stems. Usually they can have a sticky, drippy residue from them. They can be nasty and can be really hard to get rid of. You have to wipe them off usually with like maybe a hydrogen peroxide solution or something. But that's the one I really try to get ahead with. But I'm gonna keep rounding these up. I'm gonna keep putting them in here, and then we'll kind of wrap up when you see how full it gets. Okay, it's a different day because I wanted to fill in the plant room a little bit and get a lot of things in there before we kind of wrap up. So we're a couple days after I started this video, and so it's gonna be looking a lot different when I take you in. And while I'm finishing up, I go around and I find things outside that I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to save that. And one of them is the planter we put together this spring on the front porch of all the succulents. I want to break that apart and save a lot of those succulents because they look so beautiful. So I thought, let's just quick rip that apart, pot those up, and then head back to the plant room. So the planter I'm talking about is this one right here. We put together this spring, and a lot of these were much smaller. They were little succulents that I had started, and now look how beautiful and growing in they are. They've bloomed, they're wanting to bloom. They look so full and happy, but again, they would freeze this weekend. See, the burro's tail, it does so well up here. And really, I have left this thing go. If it rains, which by the way, we had pretty much a drought this summer, and you can see still how well this looks. So I have here a tote, and I have a knife, and I have a trowel, and this is how I just go in and I start taking things apart. Now, you may mess up some things, but really in order to save it, you really have to get in there and start wanting to pull the things out. So here you can see, I got some nice root structure. This is a piece that I just stuck in there, dry root. It had no roots on it this spring. So I'm gonna start separating these items, putting them in this tote, taking the whole planter apart, like this echeveria especially. Like, look how beautiful and huge that got. So I'm gonna take these apart. Oh, and this calancho, I really love that one. Anyway, we're gonna do this. Okay, I brought all these out. I literally have them just in a tub. And the back of my gator at the moment is my potting up area. So that's where I'm potting up anything I'm taking out of containers. Both of these asparagus fern, foxtail fern, were in over at Mom's house. So I just potted those up to go into the plant room. These are the succulents now I'm starting to pot up from what we just took out. And you can see I take off anything that's blooming just to kind of help alleviate some of the stress of transplanting because, you know, look at this. This is going to be stressful for the plant. So down here what I do is I always have a big trug full of all-purpose potting soil. You know, I always use my favorite potting soil. Organic potting soil and the all-purpose works really well for me for any succulents. You can also use a cactus mix, and I love that. But sometimes on a larger scale, like I try to here, it just is easy for me to buy these bigger bags and then pot everything up. So the reason I always like to do it in a trug like this, just a big tote, is it catches the mess. So I hate to waste all the soil. And sometimes if I get in a hurry and I do the potting up either on the back of the gator itself or on the ground, I waste a lot of soil because as you put it in, you know, it falls back down around it. So this way it falls back into, I just dump a bag in here and it falls back in and then I can use that soil. So I'm gonna pot all these up and usually I just use old garden containers from things I purchased at a garden center. So these are just plastic containers and you can see they still have tags on them from when I purchased items, but they just work really well. So I keep a pile of these in my shed, different sizes for whatever I need, and then can just pot things up. So echeverias, the burro's tail. I'm gonna keep potting these up, get them all sorted here, and then we're gonna take them over and put them in. So we came back over to the plant room. We potted up all of these succulents. I'm bringing in one of the last, this calancho. I think it's gonna need a different tray than what it has there, but you can see a lot of these now. I did rejumble. I took off some of the small agave that were on this table and I put on a lot of the succulents that we just planted because I want this western sun to hit them. I think they're gonna be much happier getting that. And the agave are much more established. Now some of the big ones like that echeveria I had to put down on the floor. You can tell this place, it fills up quickly because the thing is, what I've always noticed, no matter how much room we have, we grow into it. So when I first had this room, I thought, oh my gosh, so much room. Started getting more plants or starting more plants from pups of other plants. Like last year, that was one philodendron. This year, it's two. Or I started collecting them from friends, or when I traveled, I'd find a unique plant. And now you can see the room gets full. Now I have more jumbling to do, but what I like to do is kind of at least get everything in here before the frost. And then I'm like, okay, this is gonna work. So the one thing, the fig tree is a little big for in here and it really should have more light. So I'll probably be jumbling that around, moving things. I have my two citrus, the shorter ones up over there. There's a lemon and a lime, or yeah, I think it's a lime. And then I have another lemon right here that was too tall to put up on the table. So this is kind of how it works now to start moving things around and placing them. But you can see it honestly, it's a holding area that works. And this is what we have to do sometimes. We have to find an area and just make it work. So this started in the breezeway at my house, and then I kind of ran out of room there, and then realized this room wasn't in use anymore, and it was insulated enough where I could have two radiant heaters. Now, those I don't have on at the moment. The heaters I won't turn on probably for a few weeks. This room stays fairly warm once I shut everything and shut the windows, and I don't need to put the heat on it first. And I don't like to get it too warm in the beginning because these plants are still getting acclimated to come inside. And since we were having a little bit cooler temperatures, they were kind of hardened off for that. So I won't want to turn the heat on quite yet. Anytime I show the plant room or I talk about it, I want you and I hope you see that this is not a fancy greenhouse. Someday, I hope I have one of those, but guess what? We don't need those to make this work. You can make do in a garage. I've heard from so many of you in my stories when I'm putting plants away, tell me I do the same thing in a garage, or I do the same thing in a bedroom. Or one of you I think even said, my master bedroom becomes a jungle and I just sleep with the plants. I've been there and we do what we gotta do. And the thing is, that's what's fun about it. You know, you live and you learn a lot more in these situations. And since this isn't maybe a perfect area, it really teaches me a lot about plant care. I've really learned to let things dry out well over the winter before I just keep watering them. They do a lot better if they have slightly underwater than overwater. Also for fertilizing, I just watch. I don't usually fertilize too heavily. They're indoors, they're somewhat going dormant, even though they're not fully dormant. They're slowing down from their outdoor summer growth period. So they don't need as much fertilizer as you would think. I would say maybe half rate, maybe once a month do I fertilize some of them. Otherwise, I just watch them as needed. I check on it almost daily to make sure the temperature when we're getting freezing isn't getting too cold, and I just keep watch. Sometimes I need to repot things or I need to check for bugs and pests. Like I said, the dead bug brew, I definitely use along sometimes with a spinosad if I need to. That usually works pretty well. Sometimes I even have to go in and just like hand wipe off certain plants if they are getting infested. But honestly, I'm usually able to keep pretty ahead of it. Spraying them outside before I get in with that dead bug brew really helps. Also with water, just spraying them off, making sure there's nothing on them before I bring them in. There's always going to be something on them. You can't get everything off, but that's just how it is. So I hope this inspires you to think, guess what? We don't need to be fancy. We just need to make it work. Grow lights, a few windows, that's what works for me. And as you can see, it keeps the dream alive. Literally, it keeps these plants alive. So I have more plants to stuff in here, and I don't quite want to show you when it gets that bad, but if you watch my stories, follow along, you'll be seeing how full this gets. It's scary. As always, check my website, wyseguide.com, for recipes, for tips, for tricks. Follow along, let me hear from you. I love to hear from you in comments where you're watching from, the questions you may have. It's what helps me know what to make videos on, and that's what I love. So until next time, buy a plant, or like too many.